I'm going to miss the way he called me every so often just to check up on me, because I never called him. He would always call me and say, hey, how you doing? And I'd feel bad because I'd forgotten to call him. And he did that with everybody, apparently. So.
We are gathered today to honor God's gifts and blessings, and in particular, with gratitude to celebrate the life of Stephen Smelser. This worship service is a witness to the resurrection of the dead through Jesus Christ, and we are here to comfort one another in that sure and certain knowledge. Today we recognize that Stephen lived his life with energy and generosity, and that he is now at rest with the Lord his God. We thank you, loving God, for the life of Stephen, whom you have now received into your presence. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. He was fortunate to spend time with his grandparents, Homer and Vera Smelser, on their ranch in Cuba, New Mexico, where he learned and developed many useful skills. Growing up, Stephen had many interests and loved the outdoors, working with his hands in sports. He was active in Boy Scouts, church activities, and earned trophies in soccer and other sports. He graduated from Goddard High School and attended the New Mexico Military Institute and completed several vocational training programs. Stephen was a jack of all trades, and as a master carpenter, he could build or fix almost anything. He worked as a supervisor for Menifee Mining in Cuba, New Mexico, and at Big Chief Stone in Las Cruces and Santa Fe. He drilled and serviced water wells for Rogers and Company in Albuquerque, and repaired heavy construction equipment for Schmidt Construction in Lindrith, New Mexico. He was a working partner in Pony Track's horseshoeing and livestock management services, and did extensive work at the family farm in Cuba, New Mexico. He also received his CDL license and did 18-wheeler over-the-road driving for Roadrunner Trucking. Steve settled in Las Cruces in 1995, where he attended Doñana Community College and was foreman for clean-cut lawns and landscaping. He married Margaret Pacheco in 2002, and together they started Lincon Inc. after he got his G98 contractor's license in 2003. He worked on many commercial and residential projects in Las Cruces, including renovating the Hotel Encino lobby and transforming the restaurant into Azul nightclub. Currently, he was quality control supervisor for Gen Con at Barrow College Osteopathic here in Las Cruces. Steve was also an active and working partner in the Animal Haven Lodge, Salon Kennel on Valley Drive, which he and his wife Margaret started in 2008. He built the facility, which is state-of-the-art, and also performed certified dog grooming services for many years. He and Margaret both received numerous commendations from the Spray and Neuter Action Program and the Animal Service Center of Mesilla Valley for promoting and assisting with the adoption and providing services for homeless pets and animals. He truly loved animals of all types and species. He was an avid outdoorsman, a skilled hunter and fisherman. Every year he accomplished successful deer, elk, and dove hunts. He also enjoyed boating and fishing at Elephant Butte and Caballo Lakes. He was a physical fitness enthusiast, doing regular karate workouts, and earned a black belt. Stephen is survived by his two children, Amber Lynn and Jarrett, his precious children. by his wife Margaret, by his three sisters, Charissa Hughes of Thousand Oaks, California, Claire Strong of Tucumcari, New Mexico, and Sean McCall of Roswell, New Mexico, by his three brothers, Whitney Smelser of Los Angeles, California, Paul Moyer of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Jonathan Smelser of Cuba, New Mexico, by his mother, Julie Smelser of Las Cruces, by his father, Worthington Smelser of Cuba, New Mexico, by Sam Smelser of Cuba, New Mexico, who was his mentor, friend, and uncle, and by many nieces, cousins, aunts, and uncles. Stephen's death is an especially difficult loss. That despite our best efforts to understand, does not make sense. We instinctively know that something has gone terribly wrong and that he died too soon. He grew up in a loving Christian home. He was active in the youth group at his Presbyterian church and even played in the bell choir. He was driven hard to achieve. Stephen had a tender and caring heart, a strong sense of justice, freedom, and independence. And he could be stubborn at times. He was a patient man who loved kids, enjoyed helping and serving others, and was especially good at coaching the league in soccer. He was respected by his peers for his integrity and insistence on doing the job right the first time. Stephen gave it his all and was excited to try new things. He tried to encourage his children by saying, "Try it, you might like it," and urging them on, saying, "You can do it if you set your mind to it." He was a gentle soul of quiet faith and open heart, and he dearly loved his family and his friends. But somewhere along the line, his life didn't make sense. He fell into a deep and sad darkness. And so he struggled in ways we do not understand. For somehow, he didn't appreciate how loved, how special, and how precious his life really was. And so Stephen will be grievously missed in the days and years to come. We don't know if Stephen ever really knew how much God loves him. But now, at last, now that he is in the very presence of God's mercy and grace, God's wonderful promises have finally been made abundantly clear to him. I believe now that in the full radiance of God's love, at last he knows the greatest joy and delight that we share as a beloved child of God. Now at last he knows the truth of God's great and limitless love. Now he knows the abundance of God's grace. Though our sense of loss is profound, in God's love, Stephen's mortal life and journey are complete. He is at last at peace. His love for you is intact and unchanging. And may this comfort and hope be yours as we trust in the promises of Jesus Christ, that we will see and be with him again in God's eternal kingdom.
Steve had many interests: horses, hunting, motorcycles, and fishing, just to name a few. I was fortunate to share that with him. Steve was always ready and willing to help, even if it put himself out of his way. Steve would always greet you with a "How have you been, man?" And with genuine. Steve was a construction fabricator and took pride as an artist with his finishing work. Steve had the talent and the ability to implement his visions. His projects reflect this. Steve had many friends. Just look around. Steve was a son, a brother, a father, and a friend. But we will miss him. Steve was my friend. And I'll miss him.
It's no secret that he was great at practically anything he tried to do. He could operate a torch, a welder better than anybody I ever knew, lay a bead, and he liked to show those things to people. And I never knew even really about hunting until this last fall. I got to go with him and showed me around Cloudcroft and all these different areas, and just loved to teach, and he was a loving person. And I went and visited him a couple Sundays ago. He had all the kids out there on dirt bikes, and they all just looked like they were having a great time. And I came up and I gave him a hug, and I told him, I said, "Steve, you know, I love you, man." And he would always come up and just, you know, hug me and just kind of just hold me there for a while, and almost, you know, longer than I most would hug most men, that's for sure. But you know, I hope you guys understand what a great person, I'm sure everyone does. But he went to church with me recently, and I told him, I said, "I've never seen you in a suit before." And he said, "Well, I've never seen you in a suit before." So it was neat to get to share that with him. But the things he taught me, I'll use the rest of my life. There's a bunch of little things that he showed me, a lot of big things he showed me. So I sure am glad that all you guys got a chance to share something with Steve and be a part of his wonderful life that he had.
My name is Tim Daniel. I grew up with Steve in Roswell, New Mexico. He brought me into his family, and they welcomed me for 35 plus years. It's hard to imagine a world without Steve Smelser. It's hard to imagine a world where I can't pick up the phone and have a 45-minute conversation with Steve. And he won't bat an eye at a 45-minute conversation. He's been a rock in my life since we were boys. And so interestingly enough, a song occurred to me this morning called "When We Were Boys" by the band the Bellamy Brothers. And just a small little thing here. When we were boys, we knew we'd grow old. Sure as the summer turns to cold, but with our memories, they were worth more than gold when we were boys. And that just, it really hit me this morning when I heard that, obviously. When one talks about Steve and the celebration of Steve, and what is Steve, I mean, just always a positive attitude, always laughing, so extremely kind to anybody and everybody that he came in contact with. One of the most important things, I think, also is he had respect for it all. He had respect for everybody that came and crossed his path. And that was something that I always admired about Steve. I think everybody would know he had a one-of-a-kind smile. When he smiled, it lifted up his whole head. I mean, it was just, his ears popped back and his face, and you can't ever forget things like that. And as one of the other gentlemen alluded to, he could fix anything. It might not be per manufacturer specifications, or many specifications, but he could fix it, and it would work. The reality is that you will grieve forever. You will not get over the loss of a loved one. You will learn to live without it. You will heal, and you will rebuild yourself around the loss you have suffered. You will be whole again, but you will never be the same. Nor should you be the same, nor would you want to. I'm honored that they allowed me to come up here and express some of my words that I feel like will help all me and hopefully anybody else understand a little bit more about Steve, because he was truly one of a kind, and he'll always be in our hearts. Always. Thank you.
He just liked living. He wasn't a real deep philosophical guy. A lot of times he just went with the moment. He just liked to be, and he just experienced life to its fullest. And no matter what he did, he's always pushed the edge. It wouldn't, he wasn't satisfied with just doing it this much. He'd go all the way and just push the boundaries to see what he could get away with. And he's laughing all the time when he did it. I never really saw him get flustered.
Steve was just the salt of the earth kind of guy, just wonderful, smile all the time. His face lit up when you just said something nice. If he said he was going to do something, he always followed through. He always did what he said he was going to do. I remember one time in particular when he was probably 19 years old, so he was still fairly young, and I was living in Albuquerque with my father was living there. My father was mentally ill, and we were having some problems with him, and so I asked him, I said, Steve, would you go with me? We've got to go see, I need to go visit Dad at the mental hospital. And so he did, and he went with me. He was very empathetic. He went with me to visit my dad and everything. With all the things that he did, he also helped kind of save my father's business for a while anyway. We tried our best to get that business to run. My father had a buffalo burrito business. He had them in the grocery stores. So I said, Steve, I don't know what to do. I need your help. There again, he was there. He came over, we sat down on the floor, and we mapped things out, me and my friend Dana, who was also a very good friend of his. And we all decided how we could help get that business to run and everything. In the end, it didn't make it, but the point is that Steve was there. He was there to help me do that when he was only 19 years old, so he was a kid.
I honestly have so many memories of Steve over the years that it's hard to pinpoint it, but Steve and I had found this boat, this old ratted boat out on the Barindo River. We kind of fixed it up and put a top on it and everything, and it was me and Stephen Whitney and a couple other fellas that were out on this boat on the river that never moved. I mean, it was just standing water, really. And so one of the guys flipped Whitney into the water, and so that really upset Steve. And he was very protective. And so Steve kind of turned to me and he says, Tim, watch this. And he proceeded to flip the entire boat over, putting me as well as himself and all the others in the water. We could stand up, fortunately enough, in the water. It wasn't that deep, but I didn't know that, so I jumped on the boat, and I had a little scar here from when the metal got me or whatever. But and then I just remember Steve laughing, just laughing, and that's just one of the many, many memories that I have of Steve and us growing up.
You could call him up anytime. You could call him up anytime, and you'd have a problem for him to solve, and he would help you through it, and no matter what. And he would drop anything. And one of the stories that you may hear from my wife, Sharice, is she actually had a situation to where she was moving all of her stuff from Connecticut all the way to New Mexico.
I was going through a divorce, and I needed someone to move me from Connecticut back to New Mexico. And it was 2 weeks after 9/11. Not a soul was getting on an airplane. And I needed to get home. And so Stephen flew on his own private jet called Southwest Airlines, landed in Boston, and packed up my condominium single-handedly, just he and I, into a U-Haul, And we drove like mad cross country day and night. We didn't stop because he had an algebra test on Tuesday morning.
And they red-eyed it from Connecticut all the way to New Mexico overnight, and it was like, whatever it is, 18 hours just straight, 24 hours straight, just drove all the way through with all their stuff. And then he ended up taking a test the next day from college. So it was craziness, but he would do that. He would do anything for anybody. All you had to do is just say you needed it.
He got on a plane when nobody else would get on a plane. And he didn't know if another terrorist would shoot it down or not, but he needed to help his sister out, and so he did.
One of the things you need to know about Steve is the easiest way to get him to do something was say it's impossible. And so, there's a couple times that come to mind that were really pretty interesting for me. And I was out four-wheeling with him hunting one time, and we had this little four-wheeler going. It was like one of those golf carts, hopped-up golf carts, off-road golf carts. And there's this wall of sagebrush in front of us, and I said, "Hey, man, we got to stop. This is crazy. We got to stop." And he said, "Oh, really?" And he just plowed right ahead, right through the sagebrush. I mean, it was waist high, the whole bit. We got stuck high-centered on the sagebrush, everything else. Never blinked. He just laughed it off and had a good time.
I did a lot of bow hunting, mainly elk. Steve said he'd be interested in it, so he called me and asked me what kind of bow he needed and everything. I told him, well, you ought to get you a decent bow. He got him a Matthews, had it all set up, and we put in together for an elk hunt. That evening we went up there and we all set up. I had him sitting down below the canyon. I was up high. My wife and another guy, Bob, who was with us, went up there with us, and I bugled a few times. I had a big bull up the canyon bugling back at me. And I said, you know what, Steve's right down the canyon. He ain't ever shot an elk, so I thought, well, instead of drawing back and shooting out, I'm just going to let it go. So I sat there and sat real still and watched him, and he just took off, started heading towards Steve, and I thought, man, in 5 or 6 minutes, we're going to hear some excitement. Hear a little shooting, a little yelling. I never heard nothing. Steve, did you ever see that elk? He said, yeah, I did. And I said, why didn't you shoot it? He said, well, I was looking down the canyon. And I said, Steve, I was bugling up the canyon. And he goes, yeah, but I heard something down the canyon. So I was looking down down the canyon way. And he said, I heard something behind me. So I turned around, and this elk was, he said, 20, 30 yards from him, right in front of him. And when he turned around, he spooked it, and it ran off. So he said, I didn't get shot. That's what I had to say about Steve. I miss you, Steve. I will see you again.
Through the years, I had a great relationship with him. We went quail hunting, dove hunting. We just went elk hunting. Probably had one of the best times I've ever had in my life with him. We came out first thing in the morning. Some guy didn't have his truck started. It was a 5.9 liter Dodge, and he knew a little bit about them. And directly, he just made a beeline for him and tried to figure out how to get them started up. And I just, it was early in the morning, crack of dawn, we're putting on our gear. That's probably my best time, best thing I could think, other than a few times that I just got a good hug from him. He would tell you that he loved you, and that's, not common, and I loved him too, and I hope he knows that.
When we were kids, the entire neighborhood would come to our house. We were the neighborhood hangout. When someone wanted to come by, this was back when there was no cell phones, nothing like that. So, we would find out where everybody was by the bikes, stacked up in the front yard, and it was always, a bunch of bikes in our front yard. Then in college, we had an event where there's some kids that were getting too rambunctious and got in a fight and all that, and he was helping my friend Johnny Costantino, and he was down helping him, trying to get him back out of the way from danger, and he got ran over because of it, and took him out, had to reconstruct his face, and this guy was going 30 miles an hour, centered up on his head, bumper, bam, just like something you see at a Terminator movie. And he got up and started walking around. It was unbelievable. I called him out and I said, "No, you got to go to the hospital, buddy. You're in bad shape." And he's like, "Nah, I'm not going." He's just so tough, unbelievably tough. I was taller than him, but he just had that shake, handshake, the very firm. That he was nothing but man. He's just, and it carried through his character. It was unbelievable character he had, and I'll miss him dearly. That's for sure.
We will all love him. We will all miss him. But we will never forget him.
We were training in martial arts, and Steve broke his neck, and so he goes off, off to the hospital and stuff. And I said, "Man, Steve, what's that mean? You broke your neck." He says, "Oh, I'll be fine." And I said, "No, Steve, you broke your neck." And he goes, "No, I'll be fine." He says, "The only problem is the doctor won't let me shoot my guns for a few months." I was like, "That's your interpretation of breaking your neck?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "All right, sounds good." He built a lot of projects, including Azul's. He had me do some gravel over there, but he hired me on many occasions through the years as a landscaper. And I love him to death. And that's where we're at right now. He's dead and gone. And I still love him and I always will.
Do you have a message, to tell the kids?
His kids?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to say that your father was just, like I say, the salt of the earth kind of man. I can't think of a better man that I've known in my life, really. He was just a great man, a great friend to my brother, great friend to our family, someone you can be really, really proud that was your father, He was just a wonderful man. So be proud that you had such a wonderful father.
Amber and Jarrett, your daddy had a heart as big as Texas. He was the kindest, gentlest, most loving, dearest soul on the planet. We had a whole church full of people today loving on him, and they're going to still love on him. And you just need to know that he was an amazing person.
Well, I would just like to say, particularly to his son, your father was a wonderful, wonderful boy and grew up to be a wonderful man. I heard about him all from my children, from my son. He did beautiful things with my son, for my son. He was always there for him, and Timmy needed him several times, and Steve was always there. And I just treasure the friendship he and my son have, and I hope you find a friend like Steve for yourself.
I'm gonna miss the way he called me every so often just to check up on me, because I never called him. He would always call me and say, "Hey, how you doing?" And I'd feel bad because I'd forgotten to call him. And he did that with everybody, apparently. So he just always reached out just to make sure you're doing okay. And I really, I'm gonna miss his phone calls.